Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to LABMP 590, Technology and the Future of Medicine. Pleased to see all of you here today. Maybe we'll start by just going around quickly and tell us who you are and a little bit about why you're taking the course.
My name is Virchow. I'm in an immunology specialization program, and I just wanted to take this course to learn where we could go in the future.
My name is Mark. I'm also in immunology. Going to this is my fourth year, and the reason I took this course is just because it sounded really cool.
Hi, my name is Anna, and well, I'm here to try something new.
Okay.
My name is Jenny, and I'm also in the immunology course as with Virchow and Mark, and I've heard good things about this course, so that's why I'm
Okay.
I am Pooja and I'm a fellow on Dr. Solez.
I'm Anastasia. I'm in neuroscience, and I took this course because it's something unique and I want to try something new.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go.
Okay, I'm Sarah, and I'm also an immunology student. And I took this course last fall, and I'm currently still working with Dr. Solez. So yeah.
I'm Isabella. I'm in my 5th year of cell biology here at the U of A, obviously. And I'm also taking the history of medicine and science and technology, so I thought this was a nice, like, counter to, not counter, but like the history is important as well, but where we're going in the future, I think that's more important, although history is also important. But yeah, I just think it's a fascinating subject, and I want to learn more of how technology is going to integrate in all this, and especially in all our careers, I think it will help us out.
I'm Sadna. I'm in business actually, so this is kind of something out of the courses that I typically have to take. So it's a nice change, and I'm also very interested in like artificial intelligence and all the things, including technology, that will sort of get us into the future and what we hope to see in the future.
Right. So this course is about the accessible future, which is a future that's easy to understand. So without simplifying things so much that it's wrong, we're trying to sort of make it easy for you to conceptualize what the future will be like. With various scenarios, probably one or more of which will be the real future. We don't quite know, but there should be kind of protective effect in the long run. You'll know more about the future than any of your fellow students when it comes, and be better able to cope with it. So the quiz you just took, the idea is to make you familiar with what the midterm exam will be like. You may wonder why we have a midterm. We didn't used to have a midterm, but then the students suggested the course was not rigorous enough. Their advisors said it was too fluffy. So it's actually, it's the students who stimulated us to have a midterm exam. And this first day quiz also allows me to figure out if you already know it all, or if there's something left to teach you. So the objectives for this lecture: to outline the basic plan for the course, its expectations, to begin to introduce basic concepts of the course, to outline plans for Longevity Day. If I can just interrupt for a moment. There are certain things today that are like very compressed in time. And one is whether you're interested in longevity or not. Canada is the only first world country that has no longevity organization at all. And WHO, the World Health Organization, has identified the next decade is, that's 2020 through 2030, the decade of healthy aging. They're putting enormous resources into aging research and then healthy aging. And you may know that for the first time, life expectancy in both the US and Canada is going down because of, the opioid crisis and so on. So it seemed in the past maybe like no one was interested in longevity because why would you be interested? Whereas now there are things happening that are quite surprising. That curve of how old people get to be on average had gone up steadily for a very, very long time. So this is the first time it's ever gone down. If this interests you, there's a comment period which ends this coming Sunday. And if you want to make comments to the WHO about their decade of healthy aging, or want to help me make comments, so I'm not trying to force any of you to be interested in this, but if you've always wanted a leadership role and never knew what was going to be in, this could be your chance, because Canada uniquely has no leader in longevity and no longevity organization. Okay. Enough about that. The purpose is also to outline the expectations for the midterm exam, and that will be on October 29th, material to October 25th. Mentor and topics selection due on November 7th, and the paper due on November 21st. Student presentations also start on November 21st. You may wonder why there's no class on December 3rd. That is because I'm at the TERMIS meeting, Tissue Engineering Regenerative Medicine in Florida, Orlando, Florida. I can't yet be two places at one time. You'll learn later that I believe later on that we will be able to be in more than one place at one time, but I can't do that yet, so that's the reason we're not having class on December the 3rd. Currently, we can do about 2 student presentations per time, and there are 8 of you, so that would take 4 days. So that's how it's currently planned. The lecture schedule will be solidified soon. The next few lectures are solid, but beyond that, it's a little bit fluid at the moment, and we will let you know. Gagan and I are listed as giving 1 lecture together. We'll probably do more than that. That's just one of several things that may change in the future. So we have a number of spin-offs for the course, things developed from the course. It is perfectly okay if for you this is just another course, nothing special, and you don't want anything extra, you don't want to extend your experience beyond the formal end of the course, it's perfectly fine. But for some people, it does sort of start them on a journey that seems to never end, and it grows and grows, and so we needed some extra stuff. So the extra stuff consists of a large number of things. One is the University of Alberta student group. You can't have a student group without a bank account. So the current time, we have an inactive student group with money in the bank. But unless one of you or more of you becomes active with that group, it's not really going to do anything. What would that money support? It would support social events, food and drink for things not in regular class time if we ever wish to do parts of the course outside of regular class time. And as you may be aware, in the beginning we did that quite often, but in recent years there have been a substantial number of students who have jobs and kids and all sorts of things that put them in a situation where they just don't want to do anything outside of regular class time, and that's also perfectly fine. So we can cope with either of those things. The future and all that jazz, you would be aware that in the sort of technology and future space, there are some subjects that probably everybody should know about, but nobody would sit still for a lecture on. So one of those is AI safety. If you're walking down a hall, see a big lecture poster for artificial intelligence safety, probably quickly decide that you have to wash your hair or something else important. You can't go to that lecture. And similarly, regenerative medicine, all the mixed messages? Is it good? Is it bad? You know, what's happening with it? It's a little bit confusing, and you probably also wouldn't sit still for a lecture on that, although there is a lecture on that in this course. And so, we have put those subjects in poetry and music, entertaining people in an evening and sort of tricking them into learning about the same things they would have learned in a lecture by that sort of infotainment. Then there is Le Mans, France. We accidentally discovered that there was a possibility of a program. It's a unidirectional program. It only goes one way. There are no students from France coming here. It's just students from here going to France for a summer and then coming back. And we can accommodate 4 students a year. Lakini Bat is already identified as going next summer, but we don't know who the other people will be. And Gagan and Sarah both went this summer and can tell you what it was like. It was one very hot week, but otherwise it was a very good experience, I'm told. So they do kidney medicine research generally, or things related to that, or kidney medicine history. So there's also green screen videos. It's only tangentially related to the course, but it's quite urgent that I've suddenly discovered that green screen videos, that's the way news and weather is done on TV, where there's all this fascinating stuff surrounding the person that's really not there. Right, that's a green screen video. So Simon Wu, one of the students from last term, knows how to do this very well, but my appetite for it is way beyond what should be put on him. So I'm going to provide funding for him to train other students. So I'll pay him to train you, and I'll pay you to be trained, and so on. But I don't want anybody to do it who's not really interested in that kind of thing. But I thought I would mention it today just because we hope to find a suitable student sometime soon. But as it says here, not exactly related to the course. Okay, you're evaluated on your presentation, on your chosen project in the course, 30%, the paper on that project, 40%, the midterm exam, 20%, and class participation, 10%. Classes vary a lot in how shy the overall class is. When I started the course, I built in these shy student provisions, and sometimes even unshy students like to use the shy student provisions, which are things like you don't have to give your final presentation face-to-face. You can give your final presentation to a videographer, just privately, and keep working on it to get it as good as you can, and then present the video to the class, but you still have to answer questions live. Or if you're too shy to ask me a really embarrassing question during lecture, you can text me the question and I will ask it, and stuff like that. So this influences the importance of class participation. If you turn out to all be painfully shy and we have an awesome lecture and you all look so excited and no one asks any questions, then you all get approximately the same grade for class participation. On the other hand, some of you are really dynamic, and the best part of every teaching session is your questions rather than our presentation, then the class participation means more. It's there, again, because the students insisted on it, that some students in the past felt that students who don't come, who don't show up, are doing a severe disservice to the other students, because part of the experience of the class is the comments of the other students. So they felt that beyond 3 unexcused absences, you have to have a reason if you're not here, or we start deducting marks from the class participation 10%. And that was the student's wish. We have various grading traditions. To me, this seems very obvious, but for those of you who read Reddit and who actually signed up for the course because of Reddit, you know there's one bad line in Reddit. And I think it didn't come from a person who took the course, but like their significant other. Maybe they don't always tell each other the truth, because this never happened. 90 has never been a B+, never, ever, ever. And so that part of the Reddit review is wrong. I think everything else about what Reddit says about the course is probably reasonably accurate. And this is the sort of way that we've been grading for some time, and we scale the marks on the midterm. Sometimes the raw scores are shockingly low, like let's say 20 or 19 to 70 or something. But then we add enough to the top grade to make that person a 99, and add enough to the bottom grade to sort of bring them up to something respectable. And you may wonder where I found the model for doing this, and I made it up myself, and we've been doing it for years, haven't gone to jail yet. It seems like there has been no complaining about this, but yeah. So you'll hear a lot about the technological singularity. It's important for you in this course to develop your own idea of what that is. So at parties and stuff late in the evening, you can describe it in a really awesome way. Yeah, but anyway, basically it is that point in time when machines are smarter than first individual humans and then the whole human race take over the future agenda of the world, and we can only really understand what's going on if we collaborate or work together with those sentient machines in some way. And it's a part of exponential change, which means that the future is not linearly related to the past, but it is accelerating. And those are important subjects in this course, and they're unlike any other course you've ever taken. So any paper you've ever written for another course would never work for this course, because it would be lacking those key elements of sort of exponential change and stuff like that. So it has to have that special sense of the future. It can't just be like technology and medicine, you know. No, it has to be like Moore's Law. You have to see that sweeping upward of the hand of time kind of thing. So, all right. Now you could be excused not knowing anything about the singularity before February 2011, but in that month, two things happened. The singularity was on the cover of Time magazine, and the machine Watson beat the top human contenders on a TV game show. Okay, and focus groups in May 2011. We had graduate student focus groups. They gave us very lofty ideas, like the course should be open to the general public, like it is. And for some students, it would be the start of a journey that would sort of continue for the rest of their career as a human being and stuff like that. And the undergraduate students just wanted to know about grades. How are we going to grade? What are the grades? All about grades. I got the impression, which was erroneous, that I should make the course as easy as possible because that's what the students wanted. But in the end, that wasn't what the students wanted because their advisors didn't like a course that's as easy as possible. So, for instance, in the beginning, was only like one lecture that actually had medical terms, and now there are about 5 that have medical terms. But they don't have enough medical terms and you can't understand them if you don't know medical terms. But the course definitely has more rigor than it had in the beginning. So the camcorder is an important participant in the course. Sony camcorders have a feature called Sony Smile Shutter that automatically captures from the video stream still images of things like cool hand gestures and symmetrical smiles and high cheekbones and all that good stuff. We don't know exactly because it's proprietary, right? We don't know exactly what. Sony put in the mix, but we get a lot of pictures from this course, particularly in a teaching session that goes well, where people don't feel awkward, just smiling a lot. So in a really good session, we may get 200 or 300 pictures per hour, and in a really terrible session, we may not get a single one. So the camera decides how many interesting pictures there are. And so in a sense, there's a machine judging us every time, or at least every time that I'm here shooting video. So this picture of Osmer holding his arms above his head like that, you can imagine it'd be hard to actually capture that as a posed thing. So the camera captures many sort of instantaneous things that a human photographer would not be able to capture. In the beginning, we had terrible lighting, terrible sound, everything was awful. The hum of the air handling in the room was louder than anyone speaking, and everything you can imagine. And over the years, things have gotten bigger. For a long time, we were in CSIS, in a huge room that accommodates 400 people, and there were like 12 of us. But I liked it, because it had so many bells and whistles, and you could do anything in there and so on. But eventually, the registrar's office caught up with us and realized these very tiny number of students in this huge room. And they kicked us out, and we ended up here. Why this room? Because I like diversity. And in that year, at that time, these chairs were every color of the rainbow. It's so pretty and so on. I don't know, they turned orange with time. So, but that was the original reason for the choice of this room, to support diversity. For some students, the final presentation is really life-changing. So Aisha Herring, she gave a presentation. We put it up on YouTube, and within 4 days, she had a job offer from a company in New York City that she never heard of, to a very high-ranking position as their director of social media, and she moved there, and it sort of changed everything, and it altered her. And the other interesting thing is who influences these presentations. So a mentor is anyone who's ever taught in the course. You can ask that person to give you advice on the final presentation. But some of the best final presentations have very interesting facets. You sort of wonder. So Earl Waugh was Aisha's mentor for this presentation, and has this title, The Immortal Coil. And I thought, oh yeah, well, Earl knows Shakespeare, and you know, that's. But no, it was her boyfriend who came with the title. And why was her presentation given exactly the way it was? Because she over-practiced. She practiced so many times that it was sort of getting boring to her. And she thought, oh no, what am I going to do? It's over-practiced. You know, she practiced hundreds of times. And then it came the day of the presentation. And so there was some red wine in the back seat of her car. So she wrote that record for the presentation. And anyway, you can watch it now and see what you think. Okay, and then Jonathan White. Many of you have probably seen the original video of his from 2011, and it has a very abrupt start. You may wonder why anyone would ever start a lecture that abruptly. Well, it wasn't the way he started the lecture. He started with this copyrighted Jonathan Colton song, which of course we don't have the rights to, and so I, being a law-abiding citizen, stripped it off. But you may know that in his TEDx talk, which you are required to watch, he sings the song himself. So he doesn't need copyright of the recorded song because it's him doing it. You are required to watch this TEDx video from 6 minutes and 40 seconds on, and it's a part of what you're tested on midterm. If you look on my YouTube channel, you'll find that Jonathan White, for the Gartner hype curve, has been on every point of that curve. Some years he's very high on technology, some years he's very dejected, other times he's sort of in between, on the fence and so on. He's not teaching you face-to-face this term, but he's considering coming back face-to-face in the January 2020 term. But you need to know him. Anyway, he's a part of the course. The same is true for Rich Sutton. Rich Sutton has had a very strong influence on our beliefs about artificial intelligence. And so there was an artificial intelligence safety meeting in Puerto Rico in January 2015. And he was the only person from the University of Alberta. There were 89 people there, and 88 of them were planning to enslave sentient AI, keep it in a box, prevent it from accessing the outside world, and so on. And you know how well slavery has worked for mankind in the long run. I mean, it's not that successful, really. So he took a very valiant stand against enslaving sentient AI. So what's on this slide, even though we're not sure he's going to teach this term, he may, I'm not sure. But whether or not he teaches, you need to know what's on this slide in terms of his beliefs, which are that we need to set up mechanisms to ensure that this sharing of power with sentient AI works well. You have to lose your sense of entitlement, include AIs in your circle of empathy, and treat sentient AI in a friendly manner, like you would another human being. So that is the course specifics. So we shoot broadcast quality video, course website, singularitycourse.com. We don't really have a reading list other than the book. You already have the book. I don't know why they don't have like a 2018, 2019 edition, except that it's so easy to get the book for free. You know that I've been giving it out now for some time, and I don't know if that's an ideal business model. So anyway, but when they have a new it was supposed to be the idea that there would be a new version of the book every year, but that doesn't seem to have happened. I can suggest other readings if you would like. So the course is about the technological singularity, existential risks, things could wipe out all of humankind, artificial intelligence, genomics, and nanotech, ways to optimize a positive outcome for humanity, the co-evolution of humans and machines, the influence of these considerations on medicine of the future. Prominent people internationally have spoken in the course, and most lectures are not very medical and easily understood. So we have from the beginning had a balanced view incorporating tech skeptics and tech advocates. Now some of the things that happened with the self-driving car caused Dr. Gary Goldsand to believe that maybe a lot of the promise of future tech wasn't going to happen because of bad things happening with the self-driving car. So that is going to be a very interesting theme of this course, because we found a graduate student whose work is entirely on the self-driving car. She's going to start coming as of this Thursday. She's a graduate student at the University of Toronto, but she's toward the end of her thesis, and so she's able to visit us. And so we'll have an interesting dynamic, and it's not exactly that Gary and she disagree on things. I think they may see many things the same, and sometimes it'll be them against me. I mean, I think there are going to be things like the game of Go where technology gets way ahead of what we thought would happen and succeeds much earlier than we thought by decades. And there are going to be other things like the recent experience with the self-driving car, where it looks like things are slower. But I don't think that means everything's going to be slow. If everything was going to be slow, there'd be less reason to take the course, right? So anyway, that's my thought about this. Audience heterogeneity, I like looking upon this as diversity, really. It's good that you come from a variety of different backgrounds. It's good we have people from business and so on. So that will really enliven our discussions here. So I've talked about most of this, the student group, the future and all that jazz. Poetry, yes. Every Tuesday night there's poetry at the Nook Cafe. I'm kind of like the janitor there. I set up the chairs, I arrange the lighting, I set up the video, I shoot the video. And so almost everybody else there, they're young people, often living very much on the edge, at kind of fringes of society here in Edmonton. So it's quite a dramatic contrast to my life at the hospital, where when you walk in my office, you'd say, things are too good, this isn't fair, you know? So Pooja and I share that office at the moment, but if you look at me at poetry, it seems quite the opposite, that I'm performing a very subservient role there. And it's not going to be fun to watch, but you may find it interesting. So some students go, some students like it a lot. All these things that are kind of offshoots of the course, you don't get like extra credits in terms of marks, but it may make you a better human being to do some of these things. So, you know, there are like other reasons to do this stuff. I know on CKUA, the Road Home Mornings, that Bob Chumaka has a lot of poetry, and he and I did a lot of things together some years ago, the Leonard Cohen night events, so that's another part of my life that you may find interesting. And working for the course in the future, like Gagan and Sarah and Simon and Lakini and Hapey and so on. You may end up wishing to help us in that way. Then there's medical grand rounds. So last year I was invited to give medical grand rounds on February 1st. I enjoyed it quite a bit. They asked me to shake things up, and I think we did. So what's a lot of fun is the people there came to associate me with students and mentoring students. So if any of you wish to come to medical grand rounds, which is 8 a.m. on Friday mornings, I would welcome you there, and you can sit with me or sit somewhere else, doesn't matter. And recently I've been thinking it would probably be a good idea for me to go to surgical grand rounds too, which is 7 a.m. That may be too early for you, but anyway, I'm going to try that. Marcus Hutter. Next time we're going to talk a lot about Marcus Hutter. He's sort of an artificial intelligence researcher who marches to the beat of a different drummer. And it's important for us to consider most people. All the AI researchers that I've ever known, when I talk to them about him, says, he's not one of us, whatever that means. But he seems to know things nobody else knows, like what will the singularity sound like? The answer to that question is going to be on your exam, so like you need to know, and he seems to be the only person who knows what the singularity is going to sound like. And so he has a slide set, which you can watch with his audio if you want. I'm going to present it next time with me speaking, but you can also watch it on your own time with him. It's a little bit depressing, and the other feature it has is very interesting. Jonathan Schaefer, the former Dean of Science, said this is the most difficult intellectually impenetrable slides that he's ever seen. But that's not because you can't understand what every slide says. You can understand what the conclusion of every slide is, you just can't figure out how he got there. And I remember talking to Marcus Hutter on the phone, particularly about the Tower of Babel slide, which you'll see there. And he just thought I was such an idiot. So it's not like he took the time to explain, it's just he thought it should be obvious. But that next lecture, only half of it is the Marcus Hutter depressing stuff. Then we're going to talk about Future Day and Longevity Day and having fun in this course and all that kind of thing for the second half. So I'm not going to leave you in the depths of depression. We'll bring you back up next time. Okay, the dissemination of ideas, how are we doing? Some of our videos reach 5,200 people, but the Big Bang Theory TV show has the same subject matter and reaches about 100 million. So obviously there's a big gap between the people we could be reaching and the people we actually are reaching. And so if you have ideas about that, it's interesting. You know, I've said that I like surprises. So this slide that mentions the NOVA program on PBS. So one of the students in the past contacted NOVA, said that she would like to arrange for me to be on NOVA, and how do we do that? And that was her project, is how to get Dr. Solez on NOVA. I mean, it didn't actually succeed, but finding out what the sort of parameters do. The challenge of friendly AI is probably, of unfriendly AI is probably exaggerated. So what would be worse really than having artificial intelligence that doesn't like us is artificial intelligence that completely ignores us. Like, think of a bug on the sidewalk that you encountered on your way to this class, you know? Like, it's not that you hate it or you wished it ill, it's just you didn't care, right? So that would be the worst thing, maybe. And so Hutter talks about that. He talks about what would look like, what the singularity would look like from the outside, from the inside. From the outside, looking in, it will be white noise. That's his impression of what you would encounter. And inside, you wouldn't notice anything because everything is equally speeded up. And eventually, our own biological brains will account for very little because most of the thinking in the world will be done by machines much smarter than we are, and we would have brain augmenting software and so on. And like if you think of assigning your name to some idea or innovation, the whole character of that changes if 99% of your thought process is sort of machine derived and the biological brain contributes very little. So it's very, very interesting to think about those things. And we'd possibly be stuck in a dysphoric eternal youth-like state, a caricature of what it's like to be young. I don't know whether you think it's hard to be young, but like you may feel insignificant, lack of identity, and particularly if we could back ourselves up easily, then we would presumably engage in a lot of risk-taking behavior, because if your life is lost, you'd only lose a few hours, you'd back yourself up and be right on going. So the world would have little incentive to care about risk, and it's not a very fun-sounding situation. But I think part of the reason to take this course is try to conceptualize the way that these things could happen and it could be positive for the human race, and how to slightly massage the future toward a positive outcome. So positive outcome is possible. Let's make it likely. So about 6 years ago, the course became much simpler because the Singularity University bought up all the things with the name Singularity in it, with the exception of this course. So we're not a part of them, but like everything else, they sort of took over. You know, in California, you can be a beneficial for-profit company. So you can be aiming to make money, but aiming to make money by making the world better for everybody and so on. So that's sort of what they're claiming, that sort of dual purpose. And some interesting things have happened with Foxconn. Now, all your computing devices will probably put together at Foxconn factories in China. And they decided to replace 1 million workers with 1 million robots 7 years ago. It hasn't completely happened, although they did replace a lot of people with robots, but not quite the 1 million promised. So approximately half of the workforce. And then what about medicine? What about disease? We could eliminate all diseases known today and still have a terrible world where you can imagine a world in which the only diseases are those made by bioterrorism, for which only the bad guys have, you know, antidote and stuff. That would be a world worse than what we have today. So it's not necessarily true that if we eliminate all the common diseases today, that it will be a great world. And so that's another thing for us to kind of conceptualize. How can we get medicine right so that it benefits everyone? 2045 is only 26 years from now. Many of you will still be working then. What will medical careers be like then? We think that doctors will run out of diseases to treat, and instead there'll be this unending wish for human enhancement. Not just physical, but moral, spiritual. Everybody would want to be better. There's no end to how much they would want to be better. And so this has to do with the social responsibility of medicine. It is the curse of humanity. Rudolf Virchow said in 1848 when he was 27, I don't know how many of you might be 27, it's a curse of humanity that it seems to tolerate even the most horrible situations by habituation. Physicians are the natural attorneys of the poor, and the social problems should be largely solved by them. So it may sound like we're sort of mixing social work and medicine, but if you think about it, poverty is heavily related to illness, disease. So there are many ways in which to make the human race disease-free. We do need to fix society, and so there is a strong social responsibility. In 2010, I became the only full-time university faculty member taking the Singularity University Executive course. Most of the other people are like corporate CEOs or people who work for government, that sort of thing. And I was arguing that there needs to be a new type of course, multidisciplinary, beyond the multidisciplinary that anybody has ever thought of before, and it became apparent that the way to do it was for me to do it. You know, I really wasn't getting anywhere trying to argue for other people to start a course like this. So I did it myself. And there are two other somewhat similar entities, but the people running them are sort of professional keynote speakers, so they're kind of different motivation for me. There's also this idea of the post-scarcity world of abundance, and in that world, medicine will be about enhancement of well people, not about disease. And medicine writ large, which is my concept, is that idea that these fixes that society needs to get rid of poverty and injustice and so on, that lead to disease, that they are also part of medicine. That's what medicine at good large is. And you may wonder whether we're just talking about stopping aging or actually reversing aging. I think reversing aging is potentially possible. And so we need to consider the possibility of a post-scarcity world, what medicine would be like in such a singularity utopia, but also we need to consider the other side, how bad things could get if things go wrong. So Moore's law predicts singularity. You'll see this curve a lot. It's price performance of computing. It's an exponential curve. It's the thing that tells us that in 2045 that machines will be as smart as the whole human race. Ray Kurzweil is now bringing that back to 2035, I think, because he's getting older and he sees it, you know. But anyway, the argument for bringing it down to 2035 isn't all that good. And there is a very curious thing that a long time ago, Ray Kurzweil said that uploading of human brains to like inorganic substrates would be common in the 2030s. So that is just 20 years from now. And I think you can all sort of common and successful. He didn't just say it could be done, but that it would be common and successful. And if you think of all the psychiatric problems you would have, or I would have, if our brain was uploaded to a ceramic slab or something, I mean, we're just not ready for that, and we're not going to be ready in 20 years either, even if the technology is there to do it. So I think of all Kurzweil's predictions, that is the one that is the farthest off. And there's a tremendous distance, maybe 100 years, between the date when it could be done. In other words, when most people could upload their brain to a ceramic slab, and the date when people actually do it because it's sort of working and you know, one can cope with things about it. Moore's law is muted in medicine. Medicine is heavily regulated. There's a lot of security provisions in medicine. And so that's part of the reason it tends to lag behind. Regulatory oversight, it discourages risk-taking and innovation. Doesn't have the same reward system as the for-profit sector on the outside. And security always trumps information sharing. The microscope and the Megamacroscope. So I talked about the Megamacroscope in 2004. And IBM has just discovered this idea in 2017. So in other words, like I use a microscope in my day job that makes small things big enough so you can see them, right? So Megamacroscope is sort of the opposite, trying to take like the whole world and shrink it down into something you can actually analyze and make sense of. So the two courses that started last year were content similar to ours. One is at Bart's and the one in School of Medicine. But it's really just taking Singularity University courses and teaching them there. And then there's Bertalan Metzku at Semmelweis University in Budapest. Works very closely with 20 students to make them the most future-oriented medical professionals. So those are the only things remotely close to this course. I think eventually every university will have a course like this, but that's not the case now. So I would welcome your suggestions on how to capture the imagination of the public, start everyone thinking about the matters that we talk about in this course. So on Thursday, I'm going to talk more about the longevity thing. A lot of these pitches that I make, I don't benefit from, and it's not like I'm trying to sell something. It's just that I've realized every year that this opportunity was there, but with the downward trend in longevity in Canada, this is really the first year that something interesting has really started to happen, where Canadians are not living as long as they used to, whereas it always used to be that just incrementally, like every year or two, the average life expectancy increased, and one would have thought that would just continue forever. And the opioid crisis is not the only thing, it's also childhood obesity and other things, but they're all important subjects. So what I felt in 2019 is young people can maybe get behind some of these longevity and healthy aging issues more than in the past, because more of the things happening have to do with them, rather than it all being a sort of old person head. So, you don't have to do anything about that, but if one or more of you helps me, we will write a comment by the comment deadline of this Sunday, the 8th, and maybe we can even start an organization in Canada. There's lots of models in every other country for how to do that. Okay, any questions? Comments? Was this what you were expecting, or is it surprising? So maybe until they decide that they have questions, Gagan and Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about the France thing and what it was like and so on? Yeah.
You go first.
After me.
So basically we went for 2 months to work with the chief of nephrology at this hospital in West France. So our jobs included from a more clinical onset of like doing consultations with doctors, visiting patients and all that stuff, to more data analysis and more statistical analysis for generating graphs and data for papers. So there's a lot of patient interaction, but there's also a lot of like actual research going on. The project I worked on specifically was on how low protein diets can improve renal function in older patients. So they had imported a lot of dietary supplements from Italy because they had low protein diet foods from there, and they tried to supplement the diets of these older patients that had AKI. And the point of this was to see how primarily their kidney function would change, but also one thing that Dr. Piccoli, the doctor we worked, like the chief that we worked with, tried to stress is that in France and many parts of the world, doctors are chosen to make what they think is the best choice for the patient, and patients don't really take it upon themselves to make the right choice. And sometimes patients think that, whatever this treatment the doctor's giving me isn't what's best for me. So we tried to see what their satisfaction was before taking on the specific diet. And overall, we compared this set of data that we obtained with another set of patients, another set of 400 patients from 4 Italian centers, to see how this change of regime could impact, their satisfaction with life. So they're going to continue the study for another 2 years. So we did some good work, I guess. It was good because people at this hospital were from all over Europe. So there's people from Spain, Italy, France. It helps if you speak the language a lot, but everyone speaks English. And overall, it was a very positive experience, I think.
Yeah, what he said. Yeah, it was a really great experience. Just to add on to what he said, the first half of the summer was mostly just shadowing doctors. So we had the privilege of being with not just the chief, but also the rest of the staff. And we kind of got to see how they interact with patients, and we saw the difference between how doctors interact with patients here in the Western world and how they interact there in Europe, so we could see the similarities and differences. And the second half of the summer was mostly just data analysis and research work. So the project that I was working on was focused on women with preeclampsia and how that relates to chronic kidney disease. And it's a project that they've been working on and they're still working on. So it was just cool to be a part of that. So yeah.
So I should tell you how this began. So in 1990, Stuart Cameron and I started a video legacy history of kidney medicine. It then continued for 17 years, 2007, and we had about 50 interviews, and it seemed like the whole effort was kind of lost. That was a time when it was really hard to put full videos on the internet and so on, and within a few years you couldn't access any of the stuff, and it's as if it never happened. So around 2009, Georgina Piccoli and her friends in Europe started something similar, capturing the living history of kidney medicine doctors in Europe. And so eventually, I had been storing the tapes and stuff from in storage, Sentinel storage on 63rd Street, and but I got tired of paying for that, so I just took them to my garage for an entire winter, Canadian winter, unheated garage and so on. And I was certain there was nothing left on those tapes. But it turned out every single tape was readable after 20, 25 years. It was really, really amazing. So we brought the whole thing back to life and put it all on YouTube. Now we have 164 YouTube videos there. Not all history, like Gagan and I are in some of them, so it's also us, but most of them are our history. And so in this process, Georgina and I became friends, and I told her I had these 10 undergraduate students who I was working with for the summer. I'm really looking forward to that. And she said, "Do you have any students for me?" I thought, wow, what a good idea. So there was virtually no barrier. You know, the only barrier, and this will be a shocker, I think, for all of you, because you probably don't know, what does your tuition pay for? Like, you know you need to pay it, but what does it pay for? So the only requirement at the hospital is the students have to be insured. And by paying university tuition, every student is insured to a much greater extent than this hospital requires for a longer period. So you all get that. You may not realize that if you wanted to pick up and go somewhere for some months, and if the place that you're going to is concerned because if you trip and fall in the hallway or something, they might be liable, you are covered by university insurance just by being a student. And that was the only barrier. So it was so easy to set this up. So I paid for the airfare, and the people in France paid for everything else, the room and board. And so you were assured of a meal in the middle of the day, right? You're kind of on your own for breakfast and dinner, but there was a cafeteria where the meals in the middle of the day were free. So yeah, anyway, and every now and then you got a really fancy evening meal too. So I'm not pushing it. None of you have to indicate an interest in it, but if it interests some of you. The other thing is shadowing people locally. So my colleagues, most of them believe that until a human being gets into medical school, they're really of zero value to talk to. It's like a complete waste of time. We have found one person, a really excellent person. Her name is Cheryl Mather, one of my colleagues, who enjoys talking to undergraduates like you, even before you get into medical school. And so that has also worked. And the last staff meeting that we had, Cheryl Mather, sort of they did a round robin for people to talk about what's on their minds. She raised her hand and talked about how wonderful it was teaching Sarah and Emily, and what a good way it is to expose young people to medicine. So yeah, anyway, so that's part of the history behind this stuff. Yes.
I have a comment about technology in medicine, and I'm kind of skeptical that it will evolve because, like you said, there's all these ethical issues with even human testing. Like, you can't test on the embryo past the 8-cell stage, and apparently human cloning is technically possible, but we're just not allowed to do it. So, like, there's so many ethical laws in place on humans specifically, and just
Yeah, well, ethics is a very important part of this course. We end up talking about it just about every time. I've sort of pulled a fast one on Gary Goldsand because I told him he was doing the main teaching a week from today, the 10th, and it turns out that's going to be Osmer. But we're still going to talk about this stuff because the self-driving car expert is coming that day, and it's obviously an AI issue. So these questions are never simple. It's not just like a knee-jerk yes or no. Will it happen? Won't it happen? There are some things that you don't want it to be very easy to do because they're bad for the human race to be able to change the genetic makeup of human beings in a way that's passed on in the germline without really knowing what you're doing is obviously not a good thing to do. But I think once again, both things will happen. There'll be ethical progress made and real progress that's faster than we might have anticipated, and this will benefit human health. Then there'll be other places where we hit roadblocks and get slowed down. Yes, Gary?
Well, I just thought I could respond quickly to it and introduce myself. I'm Gary Goldsand, originally a clinical ethicist, now I guess more generally a health ethicist, director of the John Doster Health Ethics Center, a few blocks away. And I've been interested in this topic for many years and found Dr. Solez's course. And so he lets me take charge of a handful of our discussions. And so hopefully it will be an opportunity to get you to think about all of the ethical challenges that come up with this stuff. Both what is reasonable to think might happen and how do we even begin to answer the questions of what should we do? How should we set up systems that enable the use of this stuff? So our hope is that you're thinking about the ethics as you learn throughout the course. And that's the goal with this angle.
Yeah, it's a very important part of the course. Over the years, we've sort of alternated whether ethics or AI was sort of the dominant theme. But Earl Waugh, who was the original sort of skeptic in the course, was also sort of my right-hand person in the course in the early days. And his primary area of interest was ethics. And then Osmer Zayan, who's teaching 1 week from today and also 1 week from Thursday. He has been sort of the co-lead of the course sometimes in the interim period, and then when Gary joined us, it really worked quite well for him to be kind of my backup. So we sort of keep the course going between two of us with a lot of help from the students and so on. So the student faces will change a little bit, like Sarah and Gagan are not able to be here on Thursdays, so there'll be other students here on Thursdays. And of course, the excitement is what Simon Wu will decide. He has a course exactly the same time as this, but it's very, very appealing to him to take an active role in this course. And so right now he's in that other course, just waiting for again, the ammunition to decide, I'm going to drop this course. So anyway, we'll see what he does. That's what's going on in that other room right now as we speak. We've got 4 minutes. Anything you want to talk about for 4 minutes? So you can look at the previous lectures from the course, and there were some times when we had very sort of charismatic, outgoing students, and I have nothing against such people, they're fine, who would come to every class with sort of this little speech prepared, right? And so they were waiting for their moment in the sun, and the camera would turn and focus on them, and they'd give a little speech, and they were happy, and so on. So some of you may also wish for that, and that's fine. But there can be considerable heterogeneity. You don't all need to be speech makers. And but a significant moment came in 2012, the fall of 2012. Before that point, in the comments section of every single teaching session, what I had to say was always more interesting than what the students had to say. You may think that's great, but it's so soul-destroying for me. It's like, I'm talking to myself. What is going on here, And then finally, in the fall of 2012, there were some very wise students taking the course, and they had some really excellent comments that I learned a lot from. And so it's only really been completely rewarding to teach this course from that point onward. From the time when the only person in the room saying wise stuff was me, it was really not working for me. But now, again, we have all this stuff captured on video. So it's not necessary that each of you be capable of a wise person's speech. So, I'm happy with whatever unfolds. I was a little bit worried in the beginning when the Peter Lougheed Leadership Center began. It seemed like we were too closely associated with them. A lot of the students in the course were also students there. A lot of the people teaching in the course were students there, and so on. So it was sort of these high-performing, charismatic, outgoing future leaders, sort of people who walk into a room and this magic light shines on them everywhere they go and so on. And I wanted the course to also be for people who don't have that little light shining on them everywhere that they go, that they can open the door of a room and it's not like everybody's, endorphins go sky high and stuff, that it's sort of a normal experience, right? That the course should also be for people like that. So that's hopefully how I've structured it. And so we got 1 more minute. Anything you want to say? Or 1 minute? Thank you for coming. So, yeah, anyway, that's it. Thanks.